Well, a number of media outlets are now asking whether Congress needs to take a new look at a federal raid on Gibson guitar nearly 2 years ago. In August of 2011, agents dressed in SWAT gear swarmed the company's facilities in Tennessee, accusing Gibson of illegally using foreign wood in their guitars. Now, in light of the IRS scandal, some are asking if perhaps that incident was another example of punishing a top Republican donor. Here to explain, Judge Andrew Napolitano, who's our Fox News senior judicial analyst. And this was a crazy situation when they went down. You would have thought that Gibson was in the business of manufacturing, plutonium.
Yeah,
and not guitars with the way this raid went down.
Well, I was stunned when I heard about the raid. First of all, it was on 3 different facilities. These guys and women came dressed in SWAT gear with what we would call machine guns pointed at people, and they took dozens and dozens of employees out into the parking lot. They then seized what they said was the illegal wood. They effectively shut down the business, a beloved business to many Americans, but a privately held, perfectly lawful business. They shut it down for about a month. Gibson's legal bills are about $2.5 million. They haven't even gotten back the wood that was seized from them. Now, this wood, if it was improperly imported, that is a civil wrong. It's not a criminal wrong. You can't go to jail for making a mistake.
It's not the same as manufacturing plutonium.
Correct. It's not the same as manufacturing methamphetamine. Stated differently, there was absolutely zero basis to achieve what they wanted to achieve with guns drawn and people dressed in military uniforms. Okay. This is way, way overboard.
And so now why are we talking about this 2 years later?
Because we found out that this administration has a penchant for seeking vengeance against those who want to speak out against it, and the owner of Gibson did so verbally by endorsing Republican candidates and financially by endorsing them as well. Something that might not have occurred to those of us like you and me who watched this stuff at the time it happened. Now we see more and more of a pattern, but nothing as potentially violent as what Gibson did. State law prohibits this kind of use of force. Federal law requires that which was seized be compensated for, and the Department of Justice regulations do not permit this military-style raid on a company unlikely to resist, not involved in criminal activity, which made a simple mistake and imported the wrong kind of wood. In fact, the mistake, it turns out, was actually the exporter in India, not Gibson, the importer here in the United States.
So who was behind the raid? Who was the one? Was it local cops? Was it the feds? Was it the DOJ?
We know it was the feds, but we don't know who in the DOJ, which is why I was very happy to hear in your introduction to this segment that Congress may be looking into this, because Congress can summon Eric Holder, if he's going to be revealing this time, and say, did you know about it? Did you authorize it? Who was in charge of it? Who decided that instead of knocking on the door saying you're using the wrong wood and we're going to fine you, and if you don't like the fine, you can challenge us?
It's a phone call. It's a phone call.
And instead sent what looked like an army to invade this place.
Because now the reports are that Gibson, okay, so their chief executive is a big Republican contributor.
Right.
But at the same time, this company, C.F. Martin and Company, was using the same East Indian rosewood. And
to make their guitars.
Their CEO was a big, long time, is Democratic supporter. With the tens of thousands of contributions to Democratic candidates, he did not get raided.
Look, the raid was unjustifiable. The use of force at the raid was criminal. But the government is required to treat similarly situated people in a similar way. If C.W. Martin is let alone or gets a letter in the mail saying, we think you imported the wrong wood, they have to do the same thing with Gibson. They can't use force on Gibson because they're Republicans and a letter in the mail on C.W. Martin because they're Democrats. The whole purpose of the Constitution is to prohibit the government from using its monopoly on force against its opponents and leaving its allies alone.
I'm sure that the DOJ would say that that wasn't their motivation, that this was not a political targeting. This was, an instance in enforcing the law as is, and they're not allowed to import this rosewood. But, the problem for them now is that Eric Holder also said that he would never, prosecute a journalist. He didn't prosecute James Rosen, but he told the federal judge that he was a criminal co-conspirator in order to get a search warrant against him and so on.
He told the federal judge that he was a criminal co-conspirator, knowing that he wasn't and knowing that they would never prosecute him. I would really like to know who in the Justice Department made the decision to use a military-style raid with machine guns rather than a letter in the mail in order to address an issue that is not even a federal or state crime.
Maybe we'll find out now.
I hope we do, because Americans won't tolerate this kind of force in their faces.
Well, it's been tolerated. I mean, there was some brushback, but now we have a different perspective to look at the Gibson situation through. So we'll see. And they wound up settling and agreeing to pay a $300,000 penalty. Gibson did in the wake of this. I mean, what would you do if you had the guy,
and where
if
does
you had
that,
the
where does
DOJ
that,
raiding you?
Right. Well, now there's another lawsuit about whether the feds are going to pay Gibson for what they did to them.
All right, got to go. Judge, thank you.
Pleasure.